Hey everyone, so this is going to be the last video for this course, and honestly this is not going to be in the exam, so you don't have to worry too much about it. As we have learned Linux in this course, I thought that, well, you should know at least the basics of bash scripting. And I'm just going to show you some stuff you can do with bash scripting. I'm not going to get too much into it because it's not as important for the exam, but like it's something that might be useful for you. It might not be useful for you, because if you never need to like work with Linux, then it's not going to be very useful. And most of the time the scripts will be given to you, you just run it. But whenever you want to write a script by yourself, you should at least have the basic idea of it. So I'm just going to go through the scripting real quick. So what are scripting? Like, okay, so one of the idea of scripting is, remember when you not remember, whenever you are working with Linux in general, like you are doing GCC and stuff like that, you are writing a few lines of commands and then it does something for you. You can actually make it very smaller, like you run one script and the whole program does it for you. Okay, so this is what scripting is. The difference between scripting and programming language is um, actually is compiled. Okay, and scripting languages are not compiled, they are interpreted. Like they take one line, they read whatever is given there, and then they execute it and keep going. So Python itself is a scripting language, but C or Java are programming languages. Okay, so Bash actually supports the scripting language. Bash is the terminal you are using. If you are a Apple user, you have ZSH. If you are using Linux, you have Bash. There are other scripting languages available for all the Unix system, um, like Unix system, Unix system. And for Windows, there is the PowerShell, which is much better than their original CMD, which was pretty bad, definitely bad. I don't like it at all. So yeah, and these are some ideas you should have, like for example, if you understand scripting or like using Bash in general, you can actually use DOSBox much more, like much better than anyone else does. So anyway, so that's the idea of scripting language. Like they go one by one, like line by line, and programming languages are compiled. So let's take a look at like how bashes work. So the first thing we are going to look at is like how are you going to make a script file. So there are some like format of script file. First of all, they should have an extension .sh. It's not necessary or it's not like required, but it's important for other users to know whichever is your scripting file. Because for example, you are giving them a software and it should have a scripting file called setup.sh, and from that you know that it's a scripting file. That's the first step. It should have .sh. Okay, so in over here I have example 1.sh, example 2.sh, example 3.sh. Okay, so the second thing they need is the permission bit. If they do not have the permission bit of X, they cannot execute. For example, over here, this one has a permission bit of X. That means it's executable. So I can actually execute my example 1.sh. But if I try to execute example 2.sh or example 3.sh, it's not going to work. So that's very important. Whenever you have a scripting file, for example, you downloaded a open source software in your Linux and you want to set it up. So if you want to do that, there will be usually setup.sh or something like that, but most of the time their permission bit is not given for security purpose. So for example, you want to run it. So the first thing you should be doing is chmod c00 example 1.sh. Instead of C00, 700, you could write something like this, it will give it this u plus x will give the user a permission bit of x. Okay, so if you do that, it gets this permission bit, and from now on you can actually run it. So to run it, I just write example.sh, and what this script file is going to do is it is going to run GCC with -o. I'm going to give it a parameter. So I'll get into the parameter real quick, and it's given the idea that it's going to compile all the C files that are available here. It's going to use all the warnings, and it's going to use the standard C11. Then it's going to run the object file that was created here. So this $1 means the first parameter that I am passing. If I said $2, it would take a second parameter, and $3 would mean it would take third parameter, and so on. So instead of writing this again and again, I can just write something like example.sh space go. Go is my executable file name. And if I run it, it compiles it and it runs it, and here is my hello world, which was supposed to happen. So this is how your script file works. Like, this is the basic. After this, you have the basic of scripting script files. Okay. Second idea is here. It actually says which script language to use. For example, you have like ZSH in your bash. So bin. So instead of bash, you can specify that I'm going to use ZSH. So you write it here. Other than that, whatever you write after a hash symbol, it means a comment. Like for example, over here, this is says which bash are we, like whether we are using bash or ZSH or whatever. And here I am writing some comments. Okay, so these are comments. These are not going to be executed. Okay, so yeah, moving on. So you can actually have like variables like any other language. You can declare them like this: message equals. Remember, there's not going to be any spaces over here. If you put space, it's going to give you an error or something like that. So this is how variables are written. You have worked with path, you have worked with PS1, you probably work with home, so you have idea of how variables work. They do not need any dollar when you are assigning any value to them, but whenever you're using them, you have to put a dollar symbol. So this is a pretty straightforward example, 1, 2, and so on. I'm going to go pass through it real quick because it's not very necessary for you, but I just want you to have the basic idea of it, okay? So these are some like special variables that you can use, like $* is used to access the positional command line parameters, and the important ones are this $k, which means which parameter you want. Like I showed you, I said $1, so it means the first parameter. Okay, this is also important, like $? So what it does is whenever you are running a C code, you saw that you write return 0. So right after you ran a program, if you try to get the echo $, let's see what happens. It didn't print anything. It means that it ran perfectly. But if it gave a error reporting, let's see what happens. Well, it didn't show that either. I wonder why. Well, okay, you know what? Never mind that one. Yeah, usually you can actually use it. Oh, right, because I probably didn't put double quote. Let's see. Oh, because I'm putting hash instead of $. My bad. There we go. So as you can see, this one returns a 1 whenever it quits, and it means that there was some sort of error, right? And now if we use echo this dollar question mark, it returns me 1. So this is one way you can use bash to decide whether your code ran perfectly or not. And the convention of perfectly running code is return 0. So if it returns 0, it means that it ran perfectly. So in that case, dollar question mark is going to return 0 most of the time. But if it returns any number than 0, it means that there are errors. There are other special variables. Most of them are not used as much. So yeah. Yeah, there's a difference between single quote and double quote. Like if you use double quote, single quote, it means that it's a string. But if you use double quote, it actually like takes everything that has dollar in it as a variable. Okay, I don't know how to explain it in C. So this one is taken as a literal. Okay, like literal value. It takes the dollar as a literal value. But usually if there is a dollar, it takes it as a variable. So when you try to echo today, it prints this number, which is the UTC version of it. There are braces you can use. It's kind of like Python, like it's going to append them one by one. If you want to use arithmetic expression, you have to make sure that it starts with dollar and there are 2 parentheses. And all of these operators are available for mathematical operation in bash. Most of the time you won't be needing them, but it's nice to know about them, you know. So this is another important one. This is how if else statement looks like. It's going to be starting with if, then the condition, then a semicolon, then it says then, okay? And it ends with a fee. So if you think about it in a C format, this is the first bracer and this is where the bracer ends. And make sure that there is a semicolon right after the condition, which is very weird format, but like it looks more like a pseudocode, okay? So this is an example. Over here we are checking whether our like this special variable is equal to not equal to 2 or not. If it is not, then it says that this is the invocation, okay? And otherwise it takes the values and just like prints them. There is this version of like if else, like if it says semicolon then, and we put all our bash script over here. If we want to do else if, it says elif like Python, and it also has then over here and so on, and it ends with a fee. This fee is pretty important, okay? So those are the if else statement. And there are some other file related tests, like if you want to check whether that particular file you're looking at is a file or not, you use file. File means the name of the file. And if you want to see whether it's a directory or not, you use -d, that file name. If you want to see it's readable or not, you can just run ls-la to see the permission bits. You can also use this whenever you are working in the script level, because like in that case you are not doing it manually, you are just writing script for everything, right? In terms of string, one good thing about this like bash is that you don't have to use strcomp or something like that. You can just use like equal equal or not equal, and it's just going to work. Yeah, we also have loop in bash. If you want to do loop, it kind of looks like the if else statement. It starts with while instead of if. Over here, instead of then, it should have do. And when you are done with your loop, it should say done, okay? So these are some examples. You can give it a try by yourself. I'm not going to get too much into it because like I said, it's not as necessary, and it's not necessary for the exam at all. So yeah, we also have for loop. In this case, for loop doesn't look like C. It's more like Python 1. It starts with for, then it has some sort of list, sorry, some sort of variable to hold the elements of list in, then we specify the list and then do done, just like while. Okay, you can actually write functions in bash, which is pretty neat. And the format of function is both of these. You can use any of them, and you can actually use function, like write it just so that you can make use of it again and again. I don't think you will ever need to get into bash that much, but if you want to know, I'm just giving you the idea that this exists. Okay, so whenever you need to work on it later on in your life, you can just like Google it and be like, oh yeah, I know about it, I have an idea that it exists. But if you do not know the idea exists, you won't be able to find it, right? So yeah, you can define function calls, you can just like do it. So yeah, so these are some stuff I wanted to show you, and there are some fun stuffs you can actually do with your bash. Like for example, you want to back up your code, right? Like for example, you want to back up your code in GitHub. So how do we back up our code in GitHub? Okay, so I'm going to write a bash for that, okay? So whenever you want to create, like push your GitHub repo, you write something like git add dot, then you do git commit -m, then you write some sort of string, right? So over here, instead of writing the string, I am going to write something like %. So this is going to be our parameter, okay? Then we do git push origin master, or we can actually say like origin %2. This %2 is going to be our second parameter, and over here we actually mention the branch name, okay? So instead of writing this again and again and again, I am just writing a script for it. I save it and I specify this. Okay, this is not actually necessary. I mean, it will work either way, but this is a good practice, okay? So I wrote a scripting file over here, and if I want to execute it, first I have to do a chmod example 4.sh, and then I can do something like this, example 4. Then I specify a message like hello world or whatever, and then I specify my branch name. If I press enter over here, my git is going to be committed and pushed in my repository. Okay, so instead of writing the whole 3 commands again and again, I can just make use of it thanks to the scripting. So scripting is just to make your life much easier. Okay, and here is a fun thing that you can actually do. For example, you want to write a like auto backup. Okay, so instead of backing up your code time to time by yourself, you can write an auto backup. And for that, Linux has a special program called cron. Okay, so if you do man cron, it actually explains how it works. So cron is basically something that is ran periodically. Okay, so you can actually specify some of the scripts you want to run by yourself, and you can put them in cron jobs. So when that specific time shows up, it will just like run the program or script file. So this is something very useful. Like for example, you set your computer to back up your all of your codes and push them in GitHub. So in that case, you can make use of this particular script file, and you can put it in the cron. You can tell cron that in the midnight, just back up all of my code. And if you do that, it's going to execute this whole script by itself, and it won't even bother you for that. So these are some things you can actually do with scripting. It's pretty useful, and there are so many things to do with scripting. I And as it's not going to be in the exam, I am not going to focus too much into it. I'm just giving you some sort of like idea. Okay, like this stuff exists, so you can make use of them. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. I'll see you next time.